Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Ashreen NATASHA binti Nasir from GBA 242 3C. I will present to you my slide about capital structure. Okay, so here the introduction about capital structure. In financial management, capital structure theory refers to a systematic approach to financing business activities through a combination of equities and liabilities. There are several competing capital structure theories, each of which explores the relationship between debt financing, equity financing, and the market value of the firm slightly differently. Next, net income approach to capital structure theory. David Duran first suggested this approach in 1952 and he was a proponent of financial leverage. He postulated that a change in financial leverage results in a change in capital cost. In other words, if a company takes on more debt to leverage investments, its capital structure increases in size and the weighted average cost of capital decreases, which result in higher firm value. It postulates that the market analyzes a whole firm and any discount has no relation to the debt to equity ratio. If tax information is provided, it states that WACC decreases with an increase in debt financing and the value of a firm will increase. So, in this approach to capital structure theory, the cost of capital is a function of the capital structure. It's important to remember, however, that this approach assumes an optimal capital structure. Optimal capital structure implies that at a certain ratio of debt and equity, the cost of capital is at a minimum and the value of the firm is at a maximum. What is capital structure? The amount of debt or equity used by a company to fund operations and finance assets is referred to as capital structure. Debt and equity capital are used to fund the operations, capital expenditures, acquisition, and other investment of a company when deciding whether to finance operation with debt or equity. Companies must make compromise and management must balance the two to get the best capital structure. Next, the phrase capital structure relates to the type of business and the percentage of capital money at work. There are two types of capital, which is equity and debt. There are benefits and drawbacks to each sort of capital. To keep a firm growing, a balance is required. The construction of a capital structure that offers the optimal balance of risk and reward for shareholders is an important aspect of prudent corporate stewardship and management. The debt to equity ratio is frequently used by investors, shareholders, and analysts to determine if a company is a good investment. If this ratio is greater than 1, the company is more debt finance than equity finance. Working capital or the cash on hand is another component of capital structure. The difference between a company assets and liability is known as working capital. And liability outnumber assets in a company with more debt than equity. It is often regarded as a riskier investment depending on the industry. Okay, now how to determine optimal capital structure? The proportion of debt and equity that results in the lowest weighted average cost of capital for a company is sometimes referred to as its optimal capital structure. In fact, this technical definition isn't always followed and businesses often have a strategic or philosophical vision of what the ideal structure should be. And a company can either issue more debt or more stock to improve its structure. As a kind of recapitalization, the newly obtained capital could be utilized to invest in new assets or repurchase existing debt or equity. A company capital structure refers to the combination of equity and debt financing it employs to fund its assets. Some businesses may be entirely funded by equity and have no debt, whereas others may have little equity and heavy debt. The financing decision is the choice of how much equity and loan money to use. The weighted average cost of capital is directly affected by the financing decision. The WACC is a simple weighted average of equity and debt cost because the weightings are proportional to the market values of equity and debt. The WACC will change as the proportion of equity and debt change. If a result, the first essential item to grasp is that as a company capital structure change. For example, the proportion of equity and debt finance change, its WACC change as well. The market value of a company is equal to the present value of its future cash flows discounted by its WACC, assuming that will equal the present value of future cash flows discounted at the investor needed return. Okay, look at this example. Market value of a company equal future cash flow divided by WACC. When the WACC is 12%, the market value of the company is 883. And when the WACC falls to 10%, the market value of the company increased to 1000. The lower the WACC, the higher the market value of the company, as you can see from the following simple example. As a result, if we can adjust the capital structure to reduce the WACC, we can raise the company market value and hence boost shareholder weight. Other than that, the search for the best capital structure becomes a search for the lowest WACC because the lower the WACC, the higher the company's value or shareholder weight. And it is the responsibility of all finance managers to determine the best capital structure for the lowest WACC. Discuss factor affect capital structure and capital structure decision. Okay, first is business size. A company capacity to raise capital is influenced by its size and scale. Small businesses have a difficult time obtaining long-term financing because of the size of their activities. Creditors are unwilling to lend them money. Second one is earnings. Firms with reasonably constant income can afford to finance their capital structure with higher debt. Businesses with stronger income possibilities can handle these fixed financial charges because debt repayment is periodic with fixed interest rate. The last one is cost of capital. The cost of raising funds is determined by the supplier's estimate rate of return. This rate is determined by the risk taken on by investors. Ordinary shareholders are at the greatest risk because they do not get a fixed dividend rate. Okay, next is financial distress. They have two, which is financial distress in companies and second, individual financial distress. Financial distress in company, even well-managed companies might experience financial difficulties. It's because financial difficulties can arise for a variety of causes, some of which are absolutely beyond the control of a corporation. A sudden, unexpected downturn in the economy, for example, could cause a significant decrease in a company revenues. Individual financial distress, first is loss or reduced income. A sudden loss in income can happen to anyone at any time. You could be fired or laid off from your job without warning, or your employer could go out of business, leaving you jobless. Second, divorce. Divorce is one of the most common and serious sources of financial hardship. In fact, divorce places such a financial pressure on both sides that studies show that single mothers in the United States file for bankruptcy at a rate 300% higher than the national average. Third, failure to adequately manage your finance. Even those with large incomes can find themselves in financial trouble if they do not handle their money properly. Expenses such as credit card payments can quickly add up, and a person may find themselves in financial difficulty. It's critical to keep track of your finance at all times. Integration of tax effects and financial distress costs. Debt finance is very frequent in today's organizational system. To finance their activities, companies take on debt with either a short or long-term return. According to Modigliani and Miller, debt causes a firm's value to rise in the presence of corporate taxes. The impact of debt financing is now discussed. Because of the current value of the minimum distress cost, the change of distress is low in this case. As a result, any small rise in that value raises the present value of these charges. The growth in tax shield present value will eventually equal it. As a result of the tax shield, bankruptcy will increase swiftly, lowering the firm worth. The agency cost of equity derives from the conflict of interest that exists between shareholders and management that has two shaking and prerequisites. For example, when corporations borrow money from the market to finance their operations with debt rather than equity, the owner's interest rate falls. As a result of these predicaments, owners are more likely to disintegrate their responsibilities. It is, in essence, a direct benefit for a business owner or entrepreneur. Prerequisites include free cash flow, use of the company cars, and other assets for personal gain. Okay, for packing order theory, they have two components of packing order theory of capital structure, which is internal and external funding. Internal funding, even though internal funding is simple and straightforward, there are certain reasons why it may not be the best option. The first is that the firm retains the risk of loss transfer. For external funding, by taking out a loan for the required budget or selling a portion of the company's stock as equity. There is a lot of discussion on how to choose the best capital structure to help the company reduce capital costs and increase risk transfer. Okay, last but not least, signaling hypothesis. The decision of the firm capital structure according to a collection of ideas such as Rose 1977 and Leland and Pyle is a signal for external users. According to know, the quality of loan-raising firms is generally higher than that of stock-issuing firms. As a result, Noyes model forecasts a negative reaction in the stock price when the stock issue is announced. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you for spending your time to watch my video. Bye.